This is Michelle. This is also Michelle. Michelle likes reading a good book in a cozy room. What Michelle doesn't like is going to the dentist. But too good, this is not a dental practice. It's just a small kitchen that looks like a practice. Oh, and I'm definitely gonna tell you about this later. But for now, let's practice some cinematography with just one light. But what if you don't own a big studio like this to be able to shoot shots like this, or your place doesn't look as interesting as this one here? What if you only live in a small apartment with white walls that make basically everything totally flat? Not to mention the lack of space setting up all of your gear. Well, you just make your shot look interesting. How? Let's focus on three basics: lighting, depth, and color. Lighting is the foundation, and both of these shots were built around the same pattern. One light, the X200 RGB by ZHIYUN, and a bounce. It's that easy. Looking at the dentist shot, the X200 RGB is placed high above the subject as a top light and shot through a big softbox to achieve a soft look, especially on her skin here. This was really easy as its form factor is very compact, and therefore rigging it up as a top light let me create a nice contrasty shape in the face. You see the natural shadows on her cheek? Instantly makes the talent look less flat. Also, I added some grain in post to give it a little more texture. What the X200 RGB also does in this setup is, it gives the talent an eye light, which you would normally achieve by setting up an extra light as a kicker. So, angling your light and positioning your subject so that one light can do multiple things at once is really what I love to practice. The important part is what happens next though. Because I blocked the outside light to gain more control over my indoor lighting, the whole space was of course relatively dark. But instead of adding another light for the background, I only placed a big bounce next to the subject. The top light hits that surface and gets redirected into the background, which raises the ambience in that area, and as you can see here in the false color monitor, lets you make sure not to crush the shadows over here. In the cozy shot, the setup flips, even though the pattern is the same. The light doesn't hit the talent directly, and instead I decided to shoot it into a large surface, in this case, a white wardrobe. And with a maximum of 200 watts, the X200 RGB is powerful enough to turn this bounce into a soft ambient source that spreads across the whole room. This does two things. The combination of the light and the wardrobe acts as the main key light for our subject, which is now really soft due to the size of the big bounce. And secondly, it gets reflected by the opposite white walls of the room to fill the shadows and make details more visible. I had the X100 at around 70% and 3200 Kelvin, while setting my camera's white balance to 4500 Kelvin. I set my Sony a7S III to the second native ISO of 12800 as I was using an ND filter to be able to keep my aperture at 2.8. So you see, we basically used the same tools, one light and some kind of bounce, just different positions. Now let's talk about depth to make the shots even more interesting. First, by layering the frame into foreground, midground, and background. The same applies here. Foreground, midground, and background. Try to place some objects around the main subject and think about what would make sense. It could be a hand like the one of the dentist, or the negative fill here in the cozy shot that acts as a door frame in the foreground that wasn't actually there. Obviously, having the subject in the midground, also think about having some things in the background that give some texture. Maybe by placing a practical lamp as a light motivation over here, or to make the whole thing even cozier, add some fairy lights for a nice ambient bokeh and pillows and books for more context. A dental practice, of course, needs some props like toothbrushes, which everyone has at home, or some sanitizer, cough syrup that acts like some medicine on a tablet that is made out of a keyboard, and shiny objects in the background like this bowl to make it look more like a clinic. I used some typical cleaning gloves to appear more like a dentist. And you can even, if you have it, rig up a tablet such as this iPad here and smash a picture of an X-ray on it that you can just find online. Another idea that I was quite proud of was this. I could have just used a normal chair for this scene, but instead I wanted it to look realistic. So I covered this lame office chair with a blue sweater for color, and because of its cloth material, I needed something to make it shinier, like rubber. So I fixed it with a trash bag that I just taped on top. Looks pretty accurate to me. So arranging these different items really enhances the overall look and feel of the shots. Now, going back to the light, you can clearly see how the brighter and warm skin tones separate her from the darker and cool background. For that, I set the light to 5600 Kelvin, which is pretty much in the middle of the wide range of 2500 to 10,000 Kelvin that the X200 RGB provides. Setting the white balance on my camera to 4500 Kelvin slightly cools the whole image. Plus, reducing reds in the shadows during color grading while enhancing the skin tones then gives the final touch for a nice color contrast and once again, some more depth. The cozy shot is basically monochromatic, meaning it all has the same color. As I mentioned before, I set the X200 RGB here to 3200 Kelvin while having my white balance at 4500 Kelvin. And since the walls are white and everything's reflecting the same color temperature, the whole picture appears warmer without noticeable color contrast. That's a creative choice, but separation is still visible through exposure levels, as you can see here. The false color monitor indicates a difference in levels and makes the talents stand out. Now, comparing these two shots, I must say it's pretty awesome what only this one light combined with some filmmaking techniques does. The compact form factor really helped for rigging it in tight spaces like my apartment. The Bowens mount gives you access to a wide range of professional modifiers like the included lens reflector, big softboxes, or even those projector snoots for some cool lighting effects. And it's also very flexible in terms of power supply. I mean, there was no real need in these two scenes, but the X200 RGB has options like V-mount for just one V-mount battery, which I like a lot, or when shooting outside, even dual V-mount battery setups, which is pretty awesome and lets you shoot at a maximum of 75%. Of course, you can also power it directly via AC power through this attachable adapter. As the name of the light states, it has full RGB capability, which gives you the ability to introduce basically whatever color you want, as well as a big palette of lighting effects. You can control the light via the rotary dials or via the ZHIYUN Vega app, which is obviously very handy for adjusting settings remotely. An adjustable bracket is also included, as well as this extension arm, which I haven't really used so far, but still nice to have. Now, if you want to get a hold of this light and practice some cinematography, feel free to use my link down below for 10% off. So yeah, I hope this video gave you some inspiration for your next shoot, and as always, that's it for this one, and I guess I'll see you in the next one. Peace.